Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining me for this week's episode of When I Grew Up. On today's episode, it is my pleasure to welcome my guest, Jeff Key. Hey Jeff, how are you?
Hey Blair, good to finally meet you.
I know, it's been interesting couple of weeks for me. Thank you so much for your patience, you guys. So Jeff and I, we've been talking back and forth. And we've rescheduled. He rescheduled because he had a prior engagement. I rescheduled because I just copped out. No, I'm just kidding. I got really sick, and then he was so gracious to change our scheduling again. So thank you again, Jeff, for meeting me tonight.
Oh, I appreciate you having me on. I appreciate it.
So when I tell you guys what Jeff's job is, some of you are gonna be like, "Wow, that's..." No, a lot of you are gonna be like, "Wow, that's amazing and really cool." But also, tonight is Game 6 of the NBA Finals, and you'll understand why this is important and why Jeff's time is so valuable tonight. So Jeff, I'll just get right to it. What is it that you do?
Yeah, I appreciate it, Blair. So what I do is I actually work for the NBA G League. And so for the people that don't know, the NBA G League is basically the minor league or the developmental league of the NBA. So, basically all the rookies, especially basically all the second round picks, all the players who were undrafted, all the players who were basically on the cusp of the NBA play in the G League. A lot of guys who played in the NBA and they're trying to get back to the league also play in the G League. So, I work in the G League. I work in digital media for the G League. And so basically I got that job in November. So I've been working for the G for about, maybe 6 or 7, 8 months or so. I got that job in November because over the last 2 years prior to that, I started this Instagram page, and I really just started it for fun. I started because I've been following the G League and kind of been obsessed with it since 2015. And then COVID hit in 2020, everyone's sitting at home with nothing to do. And, during that time, I was like, I'm being totally unproductive. I'm just kind of sitting on my butt, waiting for time to pass. And so I ended up creating this Instagram page called G League TV, right? Which it showcases all the players who are in the G League. And, the G League is not mainstream. These guys are, in and out of the NBA. A lot of them don't really have that much of a name. If you click on their social medias, a lot of them probably have 10,000 or less followers. There are some big names for sure, but most of these guys are not household names at all. So I created the page basically to give these guys exposure because a lot of them are just so talented. There's over 400 players in the league, and these guys are, for the most part, NBA material, and so they just never get seen on ESPN, House of Highlights, or anything like that. And so I created the page, and then I had just been, over the last 2 years, making G League videos in my spare time. And then eventually, I got the attention of the G League, and they brought me on in November.
That is insane and so fascinating to me because, first of all, I want to just applaud you and your grit and your dedication to
I
something.
appreciate that.
Yeah, that you love. For me, that's what this podcast is all about, is find what you love and go after it. I mean, I don't know if you expected anything to happen. I feel like you just did it for the love of the game. But at the same time, you were giving a gift to a lot of these players, like you said, to give them the exposure that they deserve. They're all, I'm sure, amazing players, and only a select few make it to the NBA. And so, even though they're all so great. So, I mean, that is amazing. So before this, G League had no kind of digital content whatsoever?
So they did, but the way that the G League page was run at the time, I just thought, and now I work for the G League, right? So sometimes I gotta watch what I say a little bit. But at the time, I was like, they didn't really, in my opinion, expose. They focused on the biggest names in the league. They highlighted the biggest names in the league.
Yeah.
But there's all these guys in the G League averaging 15 points a game, even 17 points a game, whatever, that are not being featured. And so there was this second tier and third tier of players that even on the G League page itself, in my opinion, did not ever get seen. And so that's the reason why I created G League TV, was to have these other guys who have a ton of game, are on the cusp of the NBA, but you would not see them on any other digital or social platform.
Wow, that's incredible. I have a lot of questions now. You said G League is not mainstream. So how
Right.
does one get exposure to G League? You yourself, how did you watch these games? How did you know things?
Yeah, that's a great question. So like basically it kind of just started when I was in high school. So in high school, I was when I started like my quote unquote basketball career because when I was 15, 16, 17 years old, I interned for the minor league team in my area in Maryland. And so, when you're 15 years old and you get to work with, these are like minor league players. So they all played college ball. A lot of them played like overseas, right? But these guys were, a lot of them at the tail end of their careers, they were not touching the NBA. But when you're, a teenager, you think that these guys are like gods, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I started working in basketball in high school, and then I went to UMBC, University of Maryland, Baltimore County. I worked for the basketball team as an undergrad there, and we're a small Division I team, and so working at these like small levels, and at that time I was also still working for a different minor league team, so working for a minor league team and also working for the UMBC team, and so I was exposed to like all these like not lower level, but all these players that were on this grind of moving up, going overseas, potentially playing in the G League. But these guys got no attention whatsoever. I always say, being a ball player at UMBC, you're almost just like a regular student because our sports culture isn't very good. So these guys don't walk around like stars. They just walk around like regular students almost. Whereas you go to the bigger school, these guys are, are demigods in a way,
Sure,
right? And
yeah.
so I've always been really like interested in the smaller player who have really amazing stories, to tell you the truth. And they're on this grind of like achieving their dreams, and so since high school I was like infatuated with these guys, and then in around 2015 I started going to G League games, because G League games, especially back then in 2015, I mean there was probably like 150, 200 people at these games. It was like going to a high school game,
Uh-huh.
The league wasn't as developed yet at the time. Tickets were like $7, and you could buy tickets and then at the very top and then move down to the bottom because there was no security going to stop you. There were just so few people there. They
Yeah.
didn't care where you sat, and you could wait right by the locker room after the games and talk to the players. It was like an amazing experience, especially when you're young, you know what I mean? And you
Yeah.
love basketball. And so that's what kind of drove the love of the G League for me. And then year after year, it just kind of developed and I got more obsessed with it. And over time, I became more obsessed with the G League than the NBA itself.
Okay. So I this is like a new world for me, and I'm not even gonna pretend to know anything. But I love all of this so much because for me too, like, okay, I don't know if you know this about me, but I grew up as a figure skater, and so like and then like fast forward, I did my career and then I left the sport, but I came back working for television, like media for
Okay.
ice skating. But like I had this like kind of heart and passion, right, to like champion like these athletes through television, right? Like cuz it's like all this like 20 years of hard work, and then like people watch it and it's only 5 minutes of their entire lives, right? And
Right.
so
Right.
yeah, you just want to like um show people what been working so hard for. And I feel like you can resonate with that, like with what we're saying. But all this to say, I find all of it so fascinating in your desire to be like, hey, like there are people that have worked their ass off to be where they
Absolutely.
are and
Absolutely.
not being recognized for it. Okay, but back to me saying I'm ignorant about everything you're saying. Um, um, so like, does G League happen in my city, like in Atlanta?
So you do have a G League team, actually. So you have
Okay,
the College Park Skyhawks, who I don't know,
okay.
is College Park
No,
nearby? Is that close?
it's like Atlanta. I live in the suburbs,
Oh, okay,
but
okay. But the thing about the Skyhawks is that they're actually owned by Two Chains, the rapper. You know Two Chains?
yeah,
Yeah,
I
so
know
he
Two Chains.
yeah, he owns the team, and so he's at every single game. And actually, I was so hyped. One day, he randomly followed my G League page,
Oh my
and
gosh!
like, I mean, it makes sense because he owns the G League team. You know
Right,
what I mean? And
right.
so it makes sense. But I was like, oh my god, like Two Chains followed the page. You know what I mean? Like, as a guy who listened, I mean, I wasn't a huge fan of his, but I did listen to some of his music, and I know a lot of his songs or whatever, right? It was so cool when he followed or whatever. But he's at every single game.
Oh.
he's extremely involved with the team and like the, all the charitable stuff they do. I think he's even involved to some degree in like picking the players. I know that he was at tryouts this past year, but yeah, 2 Chainz owns a team, and not that there's been talks, but Drake has always said that he wanted to own like an NBA team, and then
Uh-huh.
there's always like these rumors that, oh, what if Drake owns a G League team, right? Because it's significantly cheaper. I mean, you still got to be rich, right? You still got to be
Right,
rich to own a
right.
G League team, but he owns like a G League team. So like people who are like entertainers, they love basketball, right? They love
Mhm,
sports.
mhm.
You see them every once in a while at these games too. So it's not, like I said, it's not mainstream, but every year it is getting bigger to the point where like, you will see celebrities every once in a while at the games.
I
You will
see, I
see
see.
NBA players at the games too. Still not mainstream, but getting bigger.
I see. Okay, so like people that come to the G League, just to clarify,
Yeah.
are players that are potentially like looking to go to the NBA.
Yes, yes, or
Okay.
have already been in the NBA. So a lot of times, because a roster is 15 players, and not there'll only be 5 players on the court at a time, right? So a lot of times, the guys who are like 10 through 15 on a roster, they're
Uh-huh.
not getting any burn in the NBA. They're just
Okay.
warming the bench. So the team will have them play in the G League, right, to stay fresh because they're on an NBA roster. So when they go down to the G League, they're automatically going to play 35 minutes a game.
I
You know what I mean?
see. I
So
see.
the players that you see on any given night are players on NBA contracts. Even guys that have played like 10 years in the NBA who are looking for another shot. What they'll do is they'll go to the G League, play there. Hopefully they'll ball out and they'll get another opportunity in the NBA. So it's like a mixture of like old guys who are looking for another shot and then young guys who are looking for their first shot.
I see. Okay, so let's go back to your job because
Yeah.
I could talk about the G League, I think, for a long time. As far as digital media goes, okay, so you got hired in November.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Oh, I
It's
appreciate
so
it. Appreciate it.
amazing. What does your job entail then?
Yeah, so the job. So when I got hired in November, I moved up to New Jersey. So the office that we worked out of is Secaucus, New Jersey,
Uh-huh.
and
Oh,
so
sorry.
basically,
Before you continue, I
yeah.
have to ask, like, how did they reach out to you?
So basically, like I had talked with this guy in the G League probably around like June or so, right?
Uh-huh.
And then in October, I got a random call or an email from this HR guy in the G League. And he
Okay.
was like, I got your information from this guy that you had talked to, but this was probably 4 months prior to that, right?
Mm-hmm,
And he
mm-hmm.
was like, we do have an opening. We want to talk to you about it, whatever. And I was like, all right, cool, and so basically when I talked to him, I was expecting like, oh my God, like I'm gonna get like a full-time job or whatever
Yeah.
at the G League and stuff like that. And they said, we have a contract and we need help for 2.5 months, right?
Mm.
So it was to start in November and then it was to end in like mid January, right?
Okay.
And I was like, dang, 2.5 months, like there's no guarantees or whatever. It's basically just like the way I looked at it was like a tryout, right? I have
Mm.
2.5 months to prove myself. So I said, you know what? No questions asked. I'll take it, right?
Yeah,
Two and a
yeah.
half months. I got to show you what I have. And so, my whole time that I was there for this 2.5 months in the beginning, I was like applying to other jobs too, because I was like, dang, I might be here 2.5 months, work my absolute hardest, and then it doesn't work out. And, they say, oh, we'll see you later kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
But thankfully, God willing, I was able to, after those 2.5 months over, they offered me a year-long contract, right? So I'm here for the rest of the year. And then after this year, we'll see what happens after that, right? But for the time being, I have a little bit of safety where I'm not, every day going in and being like, okay, if I don't do this, then I'm not coming back, right? So like
Yeah.
I do have a little bit of breathing room, but the way that it works, and not to babble on anymore, but the way that it works in the NBA is like you're given what they're called project employee contracts. So all the
Mhm.
people who are starting in the NBA for the first time, they're on project employee contracts, right? And so they're like I said before, they're kind of like tryouts where you get this certain period of time to test yourself, and the job they give you all these projects or whatever, and then at the end of it, you're allowed 2 project employee contracts. So my 2.5 month one was my first, and this is my second. And after this, they have to decide whether they're going to keep me or not, right? So
Okay.
yeah, so after this time is over, they have to decide if they're going to hire me full time. And we work full-time hours, meaning full-time, like, yeah, they give you benefits and all that type of stuff, you know? Um, but yeah, so basically what I do is like we run all the social medias, the website, we cover games at home and in person. We're always like traveling for all the marquee games, stuff like that, interviewing players. I'm also, which is not necessarily related to my job, it was just something that I, you know, eventually grew into, was I'm actually on the G League show too. So this year the G League had a show for the first time, right? And I started working when I first started in November. I was working behind the scenes on the show, right? And so, I would do like I would create all the videos for the show, gather all the information, stuff like that, right? And then, it was one of the biggest blessings of my life. One of the hosts of the show called in sick, right? He couldn't make it, right? And so, it was like the day before the show. They were like, dang it, what are we going to do? And they were like, well, Jeff, do you want to be on it? And I was like, all right. Like, I mean, I had never been on camera, no nothing, right? Just, like a couple of podcasts here and there. And that's basically it. And so I was like, yeah, sure. And that day we were interviewing Isaiah Thomas, who he was a former NBA All-Star. He's like an actual star, right?
If I recognize the name, he is.
Yeah. So we were interviewing Isaiah Thomas for the show. I was like, dang, So I had very little time to prepare, but it ended up going great, because all this G League stuff, all the knowledge, I can just talk about it for days. I don't have to rehearse or anything like that. They can just ask me a question. I can just start spitting off top of my head. So like after that, they were like, well, you might as well just be on the show full time. I was like, great. And so now I'm on the G League show every single week. Now it's the off season, so we don't have the show, but when the season starts again, we'll have it. But yeah, basically we do all that. And then like, all like the player interviews we do, it's just everything that gets pushed out, like content wise, we're in charge of, right? So everything that you see online or on TV or on YouTube, whatever, about the G League, we help produce.
Okay, so you personally, what does a typical day in the office look like for you then? Is it basically coming up with content or making it happen or all of the above?
Yeah, it's all the above. So it's like figuring out what you're going to produce, right? And then actually producing it. And then, the thing is that for my own G League page, there's no checks and balances. Just whatever I think is good, I post, Yeah. But with this, it's a little different because, the league has to, not necessarily approve, but you do have to ask like your supervisor, like, okay, and you have to go over like a plan and stuff like that, So it's not just like coming off the top of your head. It's more just like, you sitting down, figuring out what you're going to produce, getting it approved, right? And then actually producing it and putting it out. But for me, it's like, for someone that was doing this for free for 2 years, just in my room, it's like really cool getting paid for it because, like I said, I got nothing when I was doing my G League page. I just more did it, for fun, right? I was doing all the same stuff I'm doing now, but no money involved, no nothing, just wake up, like, make videos and then before I go to bed, make more videos kind of thing, right? So now it's like, not come full circle, but it feels a lot better doing it as a job instead of as a hobby.
Yeah. Do you have a background in like digital media or no?
So that was the crazy part, was that like just a couple years ago, I thought I was going to be a basketball coach, just a few years ago. Yeah. So like, I coached high school basketball. And we had a really good team too. Like, the team that I was on, I was not the head coach, I was the assistant coach, but the team that I was on, we produced 11 Division I players.
Oh my goodness.
Just off of one team, 11 of our like 14 guys went Division I. Now, some of them ended up, playing really well at Division I. Some of them ended up flunking out of school and having to go to junior college. It was a little bit of a mixture, but we had some really, really good guys. And one time we were nationally ranked. So we were as high as 4 at one point, and then we ended up dipping down to like 9. And so I was there, and then I worked as when I was an undergrad at UMBC, I worked for the men's basketball team, and then I was a graduate assistant for the women's basketball team at UMBC. And then I was telling you before the show, I coached my own TBT team, and this is the same as Daniel. And I was the GM of my own team for 2 years. So like for a while, I was like on this path that, I'm going to try to be an assistant somewhere or be like a director of operations somewhere for a basketball team, and then it was like really when COVID hit that I really started paying attention to social media when I made the page. Before that, I really didn't pay attention to it at all. So it was kind of unexpected, but I'm glad it worked out this way because, you know, to tell you the truth, Blair, that is still like my dream. I mean, I'm loving what I'm doing now and stuff like that, but my dream in a way is to get back into that other realm, right? But
Sure.
in the G League still. Like I just love the G League and what it represents. And you know, here's the thing, it's like the people that work for the NBA make all the money, right? And
Mm,
that's staff, players, you know, trainers, whatever, right? But the G League, in my opinion, represents like the common man, right? Now these guys are great basketball players in themselves, you know, a lot of them are like 6'10", right? So they're not necessarily the common man, right? But you know, in the G League, especially if you're a player, you're getting pennies compared to what they're getting in the NBA. You know
sure.
what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Yeah.
the grind is different. And it's kind of like what I experienced when I was working at UMBC, where you know you're
Mm,
working with small Division I players, right, who are still
mhm.
really talented, but don't get any recognition on the mainstream level. But my goal is to like one day get back into like the competitive side of basketball, right? Where because that's what I love. Like I love being on a team, right? And you come and practice every day and you compete for something, whether you win or lose. 'Cause I've been on some really, really good teams that have won. I've been on some horrible teams that have lost, and you know, there's bickering and stuff like that. But it's more about just like the process of being part of a
Sure.
team, competing, hopefully winning a championship, you know, and
Yeah.
that's like, to me, there's no better feeling than being a part of that. So, I mean, I love what I do now, but that is like my long-term goal is to be on the other side again.
No, I feel you. I feel like our heartbeats are very similar. I'm all about that, like mobilizing people for a
Yeah, yeah.
cause, things like that. I love that. Um Okay, so like you said you had just gotten into the media side of things like recently. So like was there a learning curve for you? I'm just so curious. Like for me, okay, like I'm telling you, even me pushing out content for the podcast is a struggle sometimes. I'm like, oh my God, why is this reel taking me an hour to do? Like
Right.
things like
Right.
that. Like what about like I feel like, with your job now you have to kind of always be making things. Yeah, how is that experience for you been?
Oh, it was a definite learning curve, especially when I first started making the page. Because when I first started making the page, I didn't realize that even so. When I first started it, I was making the videos, then I would put like a beat. You know, every athlete wants like a beat or a song
Sure,
to
yeah,
their
yeah, yeah.
highlight tape, and then eventually I was using like Drake and Lil Baby, all the main, you know, the big time rappers and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And eventually Instagram took down all of my videos, right? Because the songs were copywritten, you know
Oh,
what I mean?
no.
So like, you know, there was like a learning curve on like what you can use, what you can't use, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
what works, what doesn't work. Like, you know, back when I first started the page, like I would I would even feature the guys that would average like 3 points a game if they had, because a lot of them would message and be like, "Can you make me a highlight reel?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And you know, this guy averaged like 3 or 4 points a game. Now, see, I've learned that now it's like there should be like a certain threshold in what
Mm.
you know what I mean? And I'm not saying that those guys don't deserve attention, but it's hard to really promote a guy that's averaging 4 points a game. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right.
But no, there was a ton of learning. Even when I got to the G League, you're totally right. Like the way that you make a reel, right, or make like a TikTok or just a video, or even the way you interact with players, right? Like
Uh,
because you know, when you're around players and you're working for a team, you're like you're with them every day. You're like their buddy, right? But
yeah,
then in
yeah.
this case, when you're interviewing a player for a video or something that goes on TV or whatever, you're doing so as like a professional, right? You know what I mean? And so
Mm.
there was certainly a learning curve on both sides, but I would say, you know, it was a pretty quick adjustment. And and then, you know, you can't actually make anything good without some trial and error too, you know?
Sure, yeah,
That's one of
yeah.
those things where it's like you almost have to like fail and figure out what works and what doesn't work in order to be successful at it.
Yeah, man. I feel like I would be so nervous if I was you, but I know that you've been in the world of basketball for such a long time. I'm sure you just fit right in. So,
Well, actually, tell you the truth, Blair, like I swear to you, it's a good thing that I had to wait a little bit to,
mm,
you know, to make it to the G League, because I don't think that coming out of college, like directly, I would have been ready. You know what I mean? In the sense where, you know, I wasn't like mature enough to like be at games, you know, because when we're at games, we're like right in the action, right? We're right on the
yeah.
court, you know, when we're in the locker room and stuff like that. You know, when I was 20 years old, I don't think I would have been mature enough to handle that situation. You know, I probably would have been like, you know,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I
Starstruck.
probably would just been like, trying to like crack jokes with the players, or just
Yeah,
something
yeah.
that probably wouldn't fit at the time. So it's probably a good thing that I'm a little bit, more mature now that I have the job, because back then I probably would have said something stupid, or just not be able to handle the gravity of like being in the G League finals or being around NBA players, stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I've seen some of your social media stuff. Like you're in it. Like you're right there. Like
Yeah, yeah. And that's the coolest part too, is that like, like I was saying, when I first started in basketball when I was like 16,
yeah.
working for the minor league team, like I thought those guys were like kings, you know what I mean? And these
Mm,
guys were nowhere near good enough to touch the NBA, right? But when you're 16, you just don't know any better, right? And you just feel blessed to be around any player, right?
yeah,
And so
yeah.
so I think to myself too, like I'm guaranteed to be in the G League. My contract ends late November, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
basically December, right? And so I was like, so if depending on what happens past December, like I think I'm gonna get extended again, or signed full time. I'm pretty sure that's gonna happen, but there's always a chance that it doesn't happen, because there's people that I've worked with and stuff that I thought they were gonna get extended too, but didn't happen
Sure.
for them, and now they're offered another job. So
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
like, for at least on my Instagram, like I need to take pictures of like every experience, because I
Mm.
might only be here till December, right? So like I might as well remember every cool thing or every place that they've sent me, kind of thing.
I love that. Yeah, that's true. Just like take it in for what it is right
Yeah.
now. It's
Yeah.
good. Okay, well, I wanted to ask you, you said you were into coaching and stuff like that too. Like, how does one start coaching basketball?
Well, honestly, it's something that how do they start? For me, I'll tell you how I started. I
Okay.
started by literally cold calling the coach. His name is Rod Harrison at Mount Zion Prep. And he ended up, so I cold called him because I saw a listing online that they were looking for an assistant, right?
Wow, you're
And
so bold. Oh my
well,
gosh. Okay.
the good thing was that like I had nothing to lose. He didn't know me. I didn't know him. You know what I mean? I was just like, and then it said, he's an old fashioned guy. So this guy, Rod Harris, he's a great coach, and I learned so much from him. But he's not a guy that you're gonna send like your resume or your cover letter to, right? He just
Mm,
wants a direct call. So like I
sure.
remember on the listing it said like call this number, right? And so I called the number. He and I had like a couple of long conversations about things I've done in the past, what I want to accomplish. At the time, I had really no experience actually coaching, right? But
Uh-huh,
I did
uh-huh.
know a lot about basketball, and I'd studied a lot about it too. And it was, I'll tell you, the first time, especially, I knew nothing going in. You know what I mean? It was just a
Mm,
complete learning curve. Like that's why I say I learned so much from him, because just like how to deal with players, right? How to deal with talented players who might not be all there mentally.
mm.
Um, how to deal with players that are riding the bench that think they're, because every guy on the bench thinks that they're good enough to play. It's unfortunate, but I understand it completely. Where like the guy who's the 15th man on the bench gets no playing time, somehow thinks they're like a Division 1 player, you know? So
Mm-mm.
on any team you get that. Even when I was working for UMBC, you always get the player that's literally averaging zero point 0.2 points per game, but he thinks that if he started, he'd be averaging 20, So like dealing with all those, to tell you the truth, what I realized about sports is like the athletes themselves, and I realized this especially when I was working in women's sports,
Okay.
because I worked in for 2 years as the the UMBC grad
That's right.
assistant. Is like the players really don't care how much you know about the sport. They just want to be treated right. You know what I mean? And I think
Yeah.
that psychosocial part of coaching is actually the most important part. You know what I mean? It's like if you care for them, they don't care how much you know about basketball. You know what I mean?
Mhm,
If you're
mhm.
just like a good person to them, you show that you're interested in them outside of just them producing for you on the court, right? Somehow things will all connect together. And so that
That
was the
makes
biggest
sense.
thing, because I really worked for some great coaches. Also for some bad coaches too. Like it's definitely been 50-50. But for the good coaches, I took a lot from them. And then from the bad coaches, I took a lot from them, from like what not to do, especially,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it all came together. And so that's why, like, my heart is still somewhat in that.
Yeah.
And so I don't think, like, even like I said, even though I'm really happy what I'm doing now, I do think that somewhere down the line, it could be like 5 years from now. It's not immediate, but there will be like some type of shift over to that area, hopefully.
Yeah, I hope so. And I mean, it sounds like, well, I've had a little experience coaching myself, and you're right. Like, it's like all about the trust that you gain from the person that you are teaching or helping to facilitate whatever sport it might be. And so, I mean, I can't wait to see that next transition for you, like when I grow up with Jeff Key part two. Yeah.
Right, right. That'll be part two. Hopefully, it's not 5 years, right? Maybe, but tell you the truth, like I'm just keeping everything open. I'm
Yeah.
literally keeping everything open. I don't really know what's gonna happen. Like I said, past December. I could stay. I could get a job somewhere else in the G League. But everything is just wide. I could actually be working just a regular job past December.
No, I
Hopefully
doubt
not.
it,
Like,
Jeff. I
hopefully,
doubt.
I'm praying not. I'm praying that's not the case. But there could be a chance where like I'm just applying to like some regular government job. Past December, and I have
No,
to work
I
that for a
don't
little
believe
bit.
it. There's no way. There's no way they could
I
keep
hope
you.
not. I hope not.
Okay, so um going back to the G League, you call is it G League show? What is it?
Yeah,
Sorry.
it's the G League show.
Sorry.
It's
Okay,
called the
G League
Weekly
show.
G. Uh-huh.
So is that something like so what do you guys talk you talk about basketball obviously, but like how do you prepare for that as a host of that show?
Yeah, so I'm actually like, do you ever watch First Take? Do you know what that show
Yeah.
is? Yeah, the lady Gianna. Gianna is like Molly, right? So she
Okay.
moderates the conversation, and then it's myself and this other guy named Dom. And we kind of she like pitches out the topics,
Uh-huh.
and then she gives kind of like the lead into it, and then
Uh-huh.
she'll be like, Jeff, what do you think, right? And then I'll be like, well, I
Uh,
think this, right? And then Dom will give his piece, and now we don't always disagree. In fact, we agree on a lot of things. You know what I mean?
uh-huh.
It's not really meant for one person to take one side, one person to take another side. It's just like us coming from different perspectives in a little bit of way.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
But tell you the truth, like I definitely prepare for it because like I have notes and stuff like that. But if I really had to just do it off the top of my head, I could do it,
Yeah.
because now I wouldn't know like specifics. Like if someone said like, oh, what's this player averaging? I'd be like, he's probably averaging like 25, and that's
Uh-huh.
probably true, but he might be averaging like 26.3. You know what I mean?
Okay,
So
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
I do have to prepare in that sense to know like all the little details, the team records, like, the team is really, really good and that they're in first place, but their overall record. Sometimes, you have to write those things down and make sure they're in your notes. And then, especially when you interview somebody, you got to like come up with the questions, right? And then
Yeah, yeah,
a
yeah.
lot of times the questions are actually based upon what they say, not necessarily like what you
Right.
had written and planned. And so, but yeah, that's probably been like the biggest thing. Well, to tell you the truth, so being on the G League show, it's great, and I love the opportunity. One thing that I'm always cautious about is like making sure that because it is sponsored by the G League, right? It's
Yeah,
the
yeah,
official
yeah.
G League show, so I got to make sure that I'm not like saying something that I would say with my friends, right? That's always
Right.
the hard part because when I have these conversations with my buddies, you can curse, you can
Yeah.
just say oh, this player sucks or whatever, right? But when you're doing it on the actual show, you have to make sure you're phrasing it in a way that's not like totally putting this guy down if he's
Right.
struggling
Right.
or things of that nature, right? So that was especially early on the struggle for me because I knew what I wanted to say, but in order to phrase it the right way, that took a little bit of thought.
Interesting, interesting. Like a little bit censoring yourself, I
A
guess.
little bit, yeah, and
Yeah.
not completely. Like I'm not just like a loose cannon where I'm gonna be dropping like f bombs
Of
or whatever.
course,
But
of course.
it's more this thing that's like you just got to make sure that the message you're portraying it in the way that represents the G League well, right? And that also it's eloquent and that you're saying it in a way that's digestible, things like that.
Yeah, yeah. So, okay, so, being working for the G League and as much as you love basketball and all these things, like for you, what has been the most like exciting? I mean, I feel like you've already touched on a few things, but like the most exciting thing for you or like the biggest perk you feel like you've gained from working for G League? I don't know. I mean, as a basketball fan, I feel like for me, like, or any person listening, this would be a dream job, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I would say like is number one, being in all the games, not just being there, but like being in the locker rooms,
Yeah.
being in the interview rooms, being with the players before games and stuff like that. Because when we go to games and events of that, we have all the access in the world, to just do whatever, not whatever we want, but like, we just show our badge and they just say, oh yeah, you can go in here, stuff like that. So
Hmm.
something I'll never get tired of,
Yeah.
because like I said, it's like, every person who loves basketball, you know, wants to like meet players, like wants to talk to players, you know what I mean? And I could do this for probably like 20 years and I'd still get goosebumps going into the arenas and stuff like that, right? But tell you the truth, one thing that all my friends think that's a total lie is that when I worked for the UMBC team, we were sponsored by Under Armour, right? So we got all this gear, all this shoes, like just every week we get new sweaters, stuff like that. And whatever, the players got, we got too, right?
Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
so for whatever reason, people always like, you need to give me like a G League sweater or a jacket. I'm like, I would give you one if they gave me one. Like we don't get like you do not get free clothes. Like you get a few things, right? You get a few things like you get a couple sweaters or whatever, right? But for whatever reason, people are thinking like, especially all my friends who are back home, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
they're like, yo, can you give me sweaters? You give me like t-shirts or whatever. I'm like, yeah, they just don't hand out clothes
Yeah.
the way that you would think, because everyone think you just work for the league or whatever. They're just like, and there's like an open basket full of gear, you know
Of
what I mean?
swag.
But it doesn't work that way. Yeah.
That's pretty funny. Okay, so what have you experienced any like I don't know, like self-realizations or obstacles as you've been working this job or like is there something that's been difficult for you during this time?
Yeah, there definitely is like not necessarily like difficult, but when you're working um for it's the G League, but it's like under the umbrella of the NBA, right? So
Okay, yeah.
everything has so there's just so many like checks and balances that you have to
Uh,
go through in order to do something, right?
so
Like
like
I was
red
telling you
tape, you
before.
mean? Like that?
Yeah. And
Okay.
like I was telling you before with like my own G League page, like there's no there's no one I gotta like ask to do so. If I think it's cool, I'll just post it, right? If it's
Right,
like a
right.
cool storyline, I'll just post it, and there's no one to ask. But in this case, like, if you wanted to do something or you wanted to, and it's not all the time, but if you wanted to maybe like do something different, you just have to make sure that you're getting all the permission, you're getting permission from the people that make those decisions, right? Or that are a little bit
Mhm.
higher than what I am right now. And so yeah, it's like, you unfortunately you can't run wild with it. You know what I mean? Like I do have multiple bosses that I have to check into and stuff like
Sure,
that.
yeah.
But at the same time, like that's probably just one of the things of any job.
Right, right.
Is
Yes.
that like you don't get total creative freedom. You do get a good amount, but you don't get the total freedom to just like do whatever your heart desires. You do have to just make sure that you're asking the right people, because if something were to come back where they didn't like, you have to make sure that, oh, I did get it approved by this person or that person.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, you're right. I think that's with any job really. Like you have to
Yeah.
get approval and things like that. But I guess it would be easy to assume that with this job there would be less for some reason because like it's like social media, you're doing basketball, but yeah, that makes sense. I have a question. Is it might be a little bit personal, Jeff, but or I don't know, but in my head, right? Like um sorry, can I ask you how old you are?
Yeah, I'm 29.
Okay. Oh, you're
Yeah.
the same age as my husband.
Oh,
Okay.
really? Oh, how old are
Yeah.
you?
I'm 34.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
so we're 4
Yeah.
years apart. He
Oh,
turns
gotcha,
Do
gotcha.
you turn 30 this year?
I do, yeah. So the thing is that I did get, so I didn't talk about this before, but I did get off to a little bit of a late start because I was in college and I
Uh-huh.
left college for a couple years, and that's when I started coaching high school basketball, right? And
Uh-huh.
then I
Uh-huh.
came back to college,
Uh-huh.
um, and finished up. So like I did take a
That's
little bit
not a
of time
late
off. No,
start,
no, not a
Jeff.
late start, not a late start, but I was 20, like 20, I was 26 when I graduated college.
Okay, I
Right,
mean,
so, like, it wasn't too old, but it wasn't
no.
the 21 or 22 like most people are.
No, but I mean, it's actually a good place to be, I feel like. Especially if I could do it again, I would take a year of college and then take a break and then go back because it's like you don't even really know what you're learning until you know that you what you need. Do you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely, absolutely. But that's
Like,
how it was for me, and I didn't go back to college until I was the assistant at Mount Zion Prep,
uh-huh.
and then I actually got a college offer to work for a basketball program, but I couldn't take it because I didn't have a college degree. So I was like, oh, well,
Interesting.
I was like, wow. So now I got to go back to college. And so I had about a year and a half left and I finished the year and a half.
Good for you. That's amazing. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
but if it wasn't for that instance, I don't know if I would have gone back. So that was a blessing in disguise too. Just
Yeah.
me getting that offer, then having to, say no to it because I didn't graduate at the time.
That's really interesting. Um, are a lot of coaching positions like that? Do you know?
Yeah, for college, you have to have a college degree.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah. So if you wanna be a part of an NCAA staff, you have to have your 4-year
well,
degree.
that's good to know, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. So all of them are educated to some degree. I don't know if all of them like have see, but the thing is that they might be educated, but a lot of coaches are hotheads, right? They don't have like good
Sure.
interpersonal skills, right? So like there's a lot that goes into it, but just based on the actual, on paper, they do want you to
They
have a 4-year
they
degree.
do have a degree. Interesting. Okay, good to know. But okay, what I was gonna ask was, like your parents, like I don't know, like the reason I asked your age because of just generational
Yeah,
like
yeah.
kind of things. But like, were your parents very supportive of your decision to be a basketball coach and go in this direction?
No, 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 they weren't, but it's totally understandable because, my parents are both, they just entered the early 60s,
Uh huh. Uh
and
huh.
they're certainly like, and they both have had the same job for like 30 years. My
Mm-hmm.
dad's worked for the government, my mom's worked for this like science company. So they had the same job. They, that's all they've known. That's all I've known basically my whole life is them working those jobs. And so, no one in my family, and that's extended family too, like cousins, uncles, aunts, has ever taken a less traditional path, right? Especially one that deals with
Mm,
sports,
interesting.
and
Yeah.
it's one of those things where it's like, you know, especially if you're part of the older generation, you look at your son and all he does is watch basketball, all he does is read basketball books, all he does, you know what I mean? It's like he's always going to basketball practice, like, not playing, but with the team and stuff like that. And you're thinking like he's got to grow up one day. You know what I mean? Like this was his
Mm,
childhood hobby. When he was in high school, it was okay because he was like 16 years old. But now that he's like in his mid 20s or whatever, maybe it's time for him to like be an adult. You know what I mean? So
mm.
I had a lot of those conversations. But to tell you the truth, if I had a kid that was on a similar path like that, you know, it's easy for me to say I'd be 100% supportive, right? But I don't know if I'm not in that position. You know what I mean? Especially if I'm, part of a generation that didn't necessarily believe in like chasing dreams, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I say this, Blair, I'm thankful to the Lord that it worked out when it did,
Mm.
because even when I took the 2.5 month job, like my parents were like, it's 2.5 months, like you're gonna be back on your butt, like come December, right? And I was like, that could be the reality of it. But at the end of the day, like if I work for the NBA for 2.5 months, I can still say I work for the NBA, right?
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
if it was such for a short period of time. And so
Yeah.
like I'm glad it worked out when it did, because there was a point where I was definitely like thinking to myself, maybe I should just get a regular job, because when you work in college basketball, you don't make that much money.
Mm.
And then when you're coaching high school basketball, you definitely don't make any money, and you have to have another job on top of that. So I was like, dang, I'm losing out on a lot of like, at least monetarily, a lot of opportunities there, right?
Mm. Mm.
Maybe it is time to like switch to something else, but
Mm.
in God's timing, it all worked out
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
now, at least for now.
No, and for sure, I feel like definitely some risks were taken on your part for the dream. And so for me, I'm inspired, Jeff, honestly, because I feel like um I mean, I guess in your situation too, like you can take those risks. Like for right now, as a mom, I have to
Right,
like
right.
think about certain other people that I have to make sure survive. But at the same time, like even myself right now, I'm like, yeah, like if I have the opportunity, like to take a risk and doing something I love, I'm inspired by your story for
I
sure.
I appreciate that so much, Blair. And but like I said, I have till November, but I'm appreciative every day that I get to continue working for the G League. And I always tell myself, like, if it doesn't work out past November, like I'm not gonna give it up. You know what I mean? I'll still continue like looking for other opportunities in basketball. And that might just be, you know, like if there was no opportunities in basketball, I would go back to coaching high school again. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Kind of thing. So I would never like give it up, but I would never give it up completely either. Like, let's say that I did have to get a regular job one day, right? I would still like make sure I'm doing something on the side as a release, just to kind of like feed into that habit that I have of just being around the game and stuff like that. But yeah, it's been really cool. And to tell you the truth, like I take a little bit of pride in being like the first in my family, because when I made it to the G League, all my family loves basketball, right? They love
Mhm.
basketball, but they never pursued basketball as a career, right?
Mhm, mhm.
But like, even though it was for 2.5 months, all my cousins and stuff like that thought it was so cool. Even for 2.5 months, they were like, "Oh man, for 2.5 months you get to be in the NBA." I was like, "Yeah, for 2.5 months." I was like, "But I might," and then I moved to New Jersey. Then I was like, everyone they like threw me like a goodbye party. I was like, I literally could be back in 2 months. You know what I mean? Like this doesn't need a goodbye party, right? But
Oh,
like for the first person, I was the first person in the family to like move out the area. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
like, I don't know, for whatever it's worth, that's like a cool thing too.
No, it's worth a lot. Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
yeah.
Like, I feel like 2.5 months is an opportunity that many, many of us would never get. So
Right,
I
right.
think it's really neat. And like, so and also want to say, Jeff, like, I highly doubt that even if you do get released, right, from this position, there's no way. There's nothing that I feel like there's nothing that can keep you far from basketball. So,
I hope so. I appreciate that, but I hope so.
and actually on me and Daniel's episode, we talked about this, like how sometimes you just got to work in order to fund the passion, like to
Yeah,
finance the passion.
for sure,
And
for
that's
sure.
just real life. So, yeah. Okay, well, we're kind of rounding out our time together, and I always ask people, like, do you have any advice for somebody that, mm, I guess the question, because like for me, it's like you don't have a typical job, right? It's like you do digital media for sports. So I guess that would be the question. Do you have any suggestions for somebody that's like, hey, like I love sports. I want to work in something that I love. What should I do?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say from two different angles. Like, if you want to be involved with the team, they should just, especially if they're like high school, college, even after, they should go work for their local minor league team, right? And because that's
Mm,
what I did. And like I said, you're not going to do anything spectacular, right? You're going to do all the little things in between that help that team function. But also, the team can't function without your contributions, right? So, when I was a teenager, I was like filling up the water bottles.
yeah.
I was sweeping the floors. I was during the game. I was like tracking the stats like on the computer. After the game, you help like clean up and stuff. You know what I mean? You're doing all these like little intern type of jobs and stuff like
Sure.
that. But if you think about it, if no one wipes up the floors, the player could slip on the floor on a wet spot or whatever and then tear their ACL, right?
Yes.
If they go to the bench and the water's not in the bottle, like someone's going thirsty, you know what I'm saying? And so
Mm,
I always told myself that it's not glamorous work, but at the same time it's work that needs to be done in order for this team to actually survive, right? So like, get involved with the minor league team, because every single minor league team wants help. They want, and it's free help, unfortunately, it is free help, but they do want help and they do want people to be involved. And so if you take that seriously, you can learn a ton from it.
mm.
And then if you're in college, the biggest thing is to like be a student manager as an undergrad. So that's what I was at UMBC. And so, you do the same exact things where you do all the dirty work, right? You even like do the team laundry, you know what I mean? Like, you help with travel, and you learn a lot about the day-to-day operations of a team, like how a team functions, how coaches operate. You're with the team the entire time. You get all the gear and stuff like that. So, if you're in college, be a part of that team, right? And then
Yeah.
if you want to get it from like a digital media side or a social media side, is like, the thing I always say is like, just start the Instagram page, right?
Yeah.
Or the Twitter page. It's just like taking that leap of faith and being like, I'm not going to be embarrassed in the beginning when it only gets 10 likes, right? Because when my actually, Blair, so the thing is that today, did I mention that beginning? Today the page hit 100,000 followers. Yeah. Yeah, if
Congratulations!
you look
Oh
at
my
my page, yeah. If
gosh.
you so it actually is, great timing that we're doing this interview, because literally today I woke up this morning and I was at 99.8 thousand followers, right? And so I was like, wow. And so about 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, it got 200 more, and then we hit 100,000. Now, for me, I was like, and then when I saw the hundred
That's
thousand number, I was like,
insane.
wow, like 100,000, because it took me over a month to get 1,000. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
I remember
yeah.
early on, like, when you have the page, it's a little bit like. It's a little bit like, dang, this page only has 500, 300 followers, only gets like 30 likes, per post, whatever. You're thinking to yourself, like, there's no future in it. You know what I mean? Like, and I, in the beginning, definitely thought that because it wasn't picking up. But then
Mm,
eventually over time, it got bigger and more people started sharing and following, whatever. But, the biggest thing is just to start it. You know what I mean? And because this is one story, and it'll only take a second, is that I have a friend that works for the Atlanta Hawks, right? And he actually he works in salary cap management, right? So
okay.
he works in the front office for the Hawks. And when he graduated college, started a blog where he would like lay out every team's salary cap, how much money they had, like trades they could make, budgetary stuff. And he would do it on like a WordPress, right?
Okay.
And he probably had, like, not even kidding, 30, 40 followers on this site. But eventually he was able to meet people in the NBA, and eventually he got an interview with the Hawks. And he literally was like, if you want to know what I know about salary cap management, look at my website, right? And the website that got no views, no traction or whatever, the Hawks saw that website. He had all of his stuff on there, all of his thoughts, all of like his sheets and stuff like that. And he ended up working for the Hawks, and he's been working for the Hawks for like 6 years.
That's
And so,
crazy.
yeah, so I was like, dang, it really only takes like a couple people to see your stuff, right? And as long as it's good, there's an opportunity waiting for you. I don't think it really matters like the like count, the follower count, all that stuff is cool too. But it's more about like if you're producing good stuff, even if no one's like really consuming it, like if it fits what we need, they'll take a chance on you, kind of
Yeah,
thing, right? So
yeah,
I always just say like just start it, and then if you can get up one post a day, right? One like meaningful post a day, like that'll go a long way.
yeah.
Because before you know it, because the way social media works, it's like everybody is just so concerned with like clout, you know what I mean? But
Sure. Yeah.
I actually would like to have, I have 100,000 now, and then one day, if it gets to 200,000. But the most important thing is that the people who are following are consuming it. Not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily the number of people, not necessarily like the number going up. I would like to see like it has to be like an equal balance of the number going up, but also the people who are on the page are actually watching the videos, viewing the captions, stuff like that. So it's hard
Yeah.
to explain, but yeah, basically
No,
just
like
start the page.
interacting with the platform itself,
Yes,
right?
yes, that's
Yeah,
the most
yeah.
important part to me.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, you're right. And I think even for myself, like just starting something is like just my personality is and the way I was raised, it's like someone needs to give me permission. So I thank you for even giving people listening the permission to just start. Who cares, you know?
Yeah,
Um
yeah, and and that's the biggest thing too, is like once you start it, because I tell you, Blair, I had been thinking about starting the G League page for a while, right? And
I'm
then I just
sure, yeah.
I just didn't do it. I was just like, I don't know if it'll take off. Like, no one cares about the G League, right? Like, eventually, especially, it was kind of, I know, COVID was not a blessing for in any way, but
Mm,
if there was something that I had to take good out of it, was that I had a lot of free time to do those videos,
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, no, I mean, same goes for me, honestly. Like, COVID was tough, but for me too, the podcast was an outlet for
Yeah,
myself,
yeah,
and it's really been wonderful. So, like, and honestly, I was lazy, right? Oh, okay, like, I have time. I'm sure people have time. I'm sure they want to talk. Let's just do it. And so, you're right. You just got to start it and don't be scared. And who cares what people think? You just got to do it. Um, that's
there's
awesome.
there's certainly like a lot of pride that you take in having your own thing. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Regardless of
Yeah.
whether it's 100 people or 1,000 people or whatever. Just like having your own thing, being like, I started it. You know what I mean? And my
Mhm.
name is on it, and without me,
Yeah.
it can't exist, kind of thing, right? So like, that I do take pride in that. I can see like a lot of people being scared of that, but once you do start it, it definitely feels good. It feels like it's like, even if, like I said, not many people are on it and it's slow, whatever. It's just, who cares? Like, it's just something for you to get your release, something for you to have fun with.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'll even say the number intimidated me because I was like, Jeff is not gonna come on my podcast. Like,
Oh no, I would 100% come on the
and
podcast because number one, I love to just like talk about the G League in general,
yeah,
and also I'll tell you this, Blair, I do not have that big of like an Asian other than my family, like that many people I interact with in terms of like friends and stuff that are
sure.
Asian, right? So like I as I've gotten a little older, about 29 or whatever, right? I've gotten a little older. I've felt the need to be like, I want to be more in touch with like people
Sure.
from my own community.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I definitely think you did that today. Um, would you be in like okay, so my husband always says I trap people when I ask this question, but like if someone had more questions about just your job or even how to get started on things that you talked about, would you be okay them contacting you?
Oh, 100%. Yeah,
Awesome.
100%. Yeah, you can give them my, Instagram, or I can shoot
Okay.
you my number or whatever. Yeah.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Jeff. Yeah, and guys, Jeff is super approachable and he's so awesome. I like just message him at 100,000 followers, and I'm like, oh my god, he's never gonna talk to me, but he like talks to you back, and he's so great. He's so awesome. I'm sure if you've listened to this interview, you can see how personable he is. Okay, before I close out, I have to ask. Like I've been following Hyunjun Lee a little
Yeah.
bit.
I was just with them.
You were?
Yeah,
Why?
look at my
Why?
Instagram. Look at my Instagram. I was with them about a month ago in Chicago.
Uh-huh.
And it was because he just entered the NBA draft, and so
Oh,
he
he
was at the
did.
yeah, and so he entered the NBA draft, and so he got invited to the G League Combine, right, which is the NBA Combine but the G League version of it. You know what I mean?
I
Because so he
see.
was there, and then there's a picture of him and I on my Instagram. It's like a couple posts down. You'll
Okay,
see
I'm
it.
gonna see. So like he's a big deal, yeah?
Yeah. Oh, a huge deal. Huge deal. Um, he's more of a big deal because he played at Davidson, and then
Right.
he broke a lot of Steph Curry's records, and he last not this past season but the season before he shot, it's hard to explain, but he shot 50, 40, 90. He shot 50% from the field, 40% from three, and 90% from the line, which is a very hard feat to accomplish as a shooter. In fact, he's only the 11th player in NCAA history to ever do that. Even Steph Curry himself didn't do that. And so, on
What?
top of the fact that he's Asian, you know what I mean? There's just so many
Yeah.
eyes that are drawn to him. But
Yeah.
I was able to talk to him at when we were at the elite camp in Chicago, and
Uh-huh.
he's a great guy, and very like playful, you know what I mean? Like a
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
very playful. He's probably like 20 years old, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
he's
that
probably
makes sense.
young.
So he's a young guy, so he's like very I wasn't sure how what his personality would be like because when you see them in interviews, they're so stale, a lot of
Right,
players,
right.
and so
They don't want to mess up, I
yeah,
guess.
and so you don't know who's watching and stuff, but you talk to him just like one on one kind of thing. He's just like a lot. He's just more like a kid. You know what I mean? You can just not. There's no camera on him, whatever. He just acts like a normal, like kind of goofy guy.
Oh man,
Um,
I'm excited to see his career and stuff. That's
yeah,
really exciting.
Blair, he will 1,000% be in the G League next year. 1,000%
Oh man, that's
because
exciting.
unfortunately, and I'm rooting for anybody Asian, right? I don't, Korean, Japanese, whatever, Chinese. Unfortunately, he will most likely not be drafted, right? And so he won't be drafted. He'll end up going to NBA Summer League,
Okay.
and then he'll be assigned to or sign with the G League team.
So like you're saying that because he's not good enough?
I'm saying it because he's very good, but there's only 60 players drafted,
Right.
and there's hundreds of seniors, unfortunately, and that doesn't even include international players, that are entering the
Interesting.
draft too. So like he will I'm 99.999% sure he will not be one of those 60 picks. And
I guess I'll have to
usually
start watching G League from now
yeah,
on.
but next year he's going to be, so because last year, I'll say this, last year Jeremy Lin played in the G League. And
Right, and he didn't get through, right?
yeah, he didn't get back to the NBA,
Yeah.
unfortunately. Yeah, so and that was a bummer for me because he was
Me
playing really
too.
well, and and I know the whole Asian community was rooting for him, but
Yeah.
yeah, but he will 100% be in the G League next year. Will he get called up to the NBA? A lot of people play in the G League for a few years, then they get
Uh-huh.
called up to the NBA. So I wouldn't bank on next season, but maybe like a couple years down the line he'll get a shot.
Oh yeah? That
I'm
that long?
hoping. I think a couple years. I think a couple years down. I know it
Interesting.
feels like forever to wait. You know that you
I'm
have to wait a
sure
couple years to see the
for
NBA.
him to, like, okay, so like these players, like, okay, sorry, I'm sorry. Do you have to go?
No, no, it's cool. It's cool.
These players, like, do they get paid?
Oh, in the G League?
Yeah.
Oh, of course. Yeah, yeah, they definitely get paid. They definitely get paid.
Okay.
So
Like,
and it's not nearly as low of a contract as people make it. They think that these guys are on welfare. You know, the way that people and fans view the G League, right? They look at so most of the standard G League contract is 37,500, right? But that's
okay.
only for 5 months of work, right? So for 5 months of work to make almost $38,000, that's not that bad, right?
Okay. Yeah, for
Um,
5 months,
for
yeah.
5 months, yeah, because
Yeah.
these guys will go overseas for the rest of the year and they'll make, they'll make another $40,000, right?
I see.
And then
Okay.
and then there's a different group of players. They're called Exhibit 10 players that play in the G League, and they get around like $90,000 a year.
Oh,
And
wow.
then there's like the two-way players that get like well into the six figures. So, when you watch a G League game, most of these guys are getting paid like close to six figures, if not a little bit over.
I see.
Mhm.
Okay. So like they are able to live.
They're able to live very comfortable. And I'll say this, man, there's some, I follow all the G League guys on Instagram and stuff. There's some G League guys that have like iced out Rolex watches. I'm like, how do you you made 90,000 this year? That's a good money. That's 90,000 is good money. But 90,000, the Rolex watch itself without the diamonds is like
Right.
20,000, and with the diamonds got to be like 45, 50. I don't even know what the price is, but and then on top of that you have a Mercedes, like I don't know what that is, like another 40,000, 50,000, 60,000, right? So I was like, and how are you paying for this? That's what I was
Credit. No, I'm
thinking.
just kidding. I mean, 90,000 a year is not enough to buy a Rolex that's all iced out.
Yeah, that's all I saw. A regular one maybe, but I tell you, there are a couple that I'm like, and how are you affording this? Because Blair, you cannot just have an iced out Rolex and just have that. You have to have the iced out necklace too,
Right, to go
right?
with
Like,
it.
yeah,
Of
and then you have to have a
course.
nice pair of earrings, right? So like, it's not just you have one accessory. You have like minimum three.
That is so funny. Okay. Well, okay, that's good to know because I was like worried for my Korean.
Yeah, yeah, he's gonna be okay though. He's gonna be
Okay,
okay.
okay. I see. Man, that's unfortunate.
Yeah. And I'll say this, he will be, I'm almost certain that he will be on one of the players that they're called Exhibit 10 players that makes 90,000 a year. So
So
his
these
first year.
Exhibit 10 players, they're just better?
Yeah, so basically the Exhibit 10 players, it's hard to explain, but their player rights
Uh-huh.
belong to an NBA team,
I
right?
see.
So
Okay,
like,
okay, okay.
yeah, so
Okay.
for example, if Lee plays for the Skyhawks, who are the College Park Skyhawks,
Uh-huh,
right?
uh-huh.
This college, like his player rights would be owned by the Atlanta
Atlanta
Hawks.
Hawks.
Yeah,
Okay.
and
I
so
got it.
that's why they give him like an extra 50,000.
That makes sense.
Uh-huh.
That makes sense. All right, man. I appreciate the education today. I learned so much, and I'm like really excited because now I feel like I'm going to look at G League in a different perspective, and I'm probably going to pay more attention too. So
Yeah. Go to a Skyhawks game because at the very least, I'm pretty sure Two Chainz takes pictures of everybody. That's why I want to go to one of the Skyhawk games and actually in College Park.
well, you got to let
So,
me know when you're here.
yeah, that's that. Like the where we travel and stuff like that depends on like where the marquee games are being played,
I
and
see. I
you know what I
see.
mean, stuff like that. So if there's a chance that I'm in College Park next year, we'll go to a game together and we'll get a picture with Two Chainz.
Yes, that would be awesome. My son would love it too, I'm sure.
Yeah. I mean, and Two Chainz is like 6'7" too, which I actually
He
just recently
is?
found out. Yeah, he's like 6'7". So we'll look like little shrimps next to him.
I can't wait. Well, Jeff, thank you so much again for your time. I'll let you go. I know you got a game to watch. I really appreciate you. Thank you for your transparency today.
Blair, I appreciate it. Thanks for talking.
No, well, guys, if you enjoyed this episode, please feel free to reach out. Jeff is happy to talk to you. I'll connect you if you want. You can email me at podcastwigu@gmail.com, or you can DM me through social media. Thanks, guys. Until next time, bye.